After my brother's funeral, I thought the worst part was over. But then I found his journal tucked away in a box under his bed. Now, every night feels longer than the last, and I cannot close my eyes without hearing his voice, or wondering if someone else is still watching me. If you want to uncover the truth with me, subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. I will need you here with me as I read every page. The funeral had ended hours ago, but the scent of damp flowers still lingered on my clothes. My shoes were stained from the wet earth near his grave, and my hands shook when I finally closed the door behind me. The house was too quiet. My brother Daniel's absence felt like a hole carved through every wall and window, an emptiness I could not fill no matter how many lamps I switched on. I sat on the edge of his bed. The sheets were untouched, folded neatly like he had planned to come back to them. I hated how ordinary everything looked. His shoes were still lined up under the dresser, his jacket slung over the chair like he had tossed it there in a hurry. I wanted to believe that if I sat still long enough, I would hear him moving in the kitchen again, humming while he made tea. But instead, I heard something else. A faint creak, like a floorboard settling in the hall. I froze. It was an old house. I reminded myself of that. But grief sharpens your imagination until even silence feels dangerous. I took a slow breath and tried to focus on anything else. That was when I saw the corner of a box peeking out from beneath his bed frame. It was wooden, dark, and dusty, with scratches along the lid as if someone had opened and closed it too many times. I knelt down, pulled it out, and set it on the bed. The box was heavier than I expected. My hands hesitated before unlatching it. Inside were ordinary things at first: a bundle of letters, a faded photograph of us as children, and an old wristwatch I had never seen him wear. But beneath these items was a journal. Its leather cover was cracked, edges worn from years of handling. There was no title, no name, just a dark stain near the corner that looked disturbingly like dried blood. I opened it. The first page was dated October 4th, 2021, nearly 2 years ago. If someone is reading this, it means I am gone. Maybe this was inevitable. Maybe I should have told you sooner, but I could not risk it. Not after what I saw. Not after what I did. My heart thudded painfully. I read it twice, my fingers tightening around the paper. What did he see? What did he do? I turned the page. It started the night I heard footsteps in the attic. I thought it was nothing at first. Old houses make noises, right? But then I heard the whispering. It sounded like my own voice. I followed it, and what I found. The sentence stopped abruptly. The ink trailed off like he had been interrupted mid-thought. I sat there in stunned silence, listening to the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. The journal felt heavy in my lap, as if it contained more than paper and ink. I wanted to slam it shut and throw it back in the box, but I could not. My hands moved almost against my will as I flipped to the next page. I am not crazy. I know what I saw. But if I tell anyone, they will think I have lost my mind. The mirror is the worst. Do not look in it for too long. Sometimes it looks back at you differently. Sometimes it smiles when you do not. I shivered, glancing toward the mirror across his room. It stood tall in the corner, draped in a thin layer of dust. I had not noticed it until now. My reflection stared back, pale and wide-eyed. I could not help but imagine it smiling even if I did not. Suddenly, there was another creak. Louder this time. I snapped the journal shut. Who is there? My voice trembled in the empty room. Silence. I waited for a reply I knew would not come. It was probably nothing. I was exhausted. My mind was playing tricks. Still, I locked the bedroom door before continuing. The next few pages were scattered entries. Daniel described sleepless nights, noises behind walls, objects moving on their own. He wrote about the attic door creaking open even though he swore he had nailed it shut. And then, one entry stopped me cold. I saw her again. At the foot of my bed. She looks like you, but older. Her eyes are wrong. I do not think she is human. I dropped the journal. My breath came fast and shallow. He saw me? No. That made no sense. I pressed my hands against my face, trying to steady myself. Maybe grief had driven him mad. Maybe he had imagined everything in this journal. But why did he hide it? Why keep something like this locked away, as if afraid someone might find it? My phone buzzed suddenly, making me jump. It was a message from an unknown number. Stop reading it. I froze. The phone slipped out of my hand and hit the floor. The message disappeared. I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling as I unlocked it again. The text was gone, as if it had never been there. A chill crawled up my spine. I picked up the journal again, gripping it so tightly my knuckles ached. This was not coincidence. Someone knew I had found it. I turned another page, desperate for answers. If you are reading this, do not trust anyone. Especially not the one who keeps asking about me. They already know too much. I think they are watching the house. A faint tap sounded against the window. I whipped my head toward it. A figure stood outside in the dark, barely visible through the thin curtain. I froze, holding my breath as the shadow shifted slightly. My fingers dug into the journal, the words on the page burning in my mind. I whispered his name. Daniel, what did you get yourself into? The figure stayed still, watching. And then, slowly, it raised a hand, and waved. The figure outside my window did not move for what felt like hours. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the faint silhouette framed by the dim glow of the streetlight. The curtains fluttered slightly in the draft, and for a moment, I wondered if I was imagining it altogether. But then it waved again, slowly, deliberately, like it was inviting me closer. My hand tightened on the edge of the bed until my knuckles turned white. I could not move. I could not scream. I could only watch. Finally, I forced myself to act. I stumbled backward, reaching for my phone on the floor. My fingers fumbled over the screen as I dialed 911. But before I could hit the call button, the figure was gone. I rushed to the window, yanking the curtain aside, heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. The street outside was empty. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a dog several houses away. I pressed my forehead against the glass, breath fogging the cold pane, scanning every shadow, every corner, every hedge. Nothing. It was as if no one had been there at all. I let out a shaky breath, locking the window latch with trembling hands before stepping back. My eyes darted toward the journal on the bed. Its presence suddenly felt heavier, more dangerous, as if opening it again would summon whoever or whatever had just been watching me. But I could not stop now. I sat down, flipping back to where I had left off. The next entry was dated February 15, 2022. I saw them again tonight. I know they are not real, but it feels real. They stand outside my window and wait. Sometimes they knock, but when I look, there is no one there. I am losing sleep. I think they want me to open the door. My skin crawled. Daniel had been writing about this exact thing. The figure outside. The knocking. I swallowed hard and turned to the next page. I tried to talk to them. I shouted through the glass. They smiled and mouthed something I could not hear. I think it was my name. But their mouth moved wrong, too slow, like an echo running behind the sound. I looked toward the mirror in his room again, that dusty, looming thing in the corner. My reflection seemed too still, too focused. I quickly averted my gaze. If I disappear, Daniel's next line read, "It will not be by choice." A shudder ran down my spine. I closed the journal for a moment and rubbed my face with both hands. I needed answers. I decided to call my mother. She had been devastated after the funeral and barely spoke during the service, but if anyone knew about Daniel's state of mind before he died, it would be her. The phone rang 3 times before she answered. Her voice was quiet, hoarse. "Hello." "Mom," I said, trying to sound calm. "Did Daniel ever say anything strange to you before he died?" There was a pause. I heard the sound of her breathing, shaky and uneven. "What do you mean? Like, did he ever mention seeing things? Or hearing noises? Anything that worried you?" She hesitated again. I could hear the faint sound of her shifting on the other end. "Why are you asking me this?" she whispered. I bit my lip, unsure how much to say. I found something in his room. A journal. He wrote about people outside his window, about voices. Another long silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was trembling. I told him to stop talking about it. I told him to see someone. He would not listen. He said if he told anyone else, it would get worse. My grip on the phone tightened. Worse? What did that mean? He said they were watching him, she said softly. He said they sometimes looked like us. Like family. I froze. He told me one night he woke up and saw me standing at the foot of his bed, she continued, her voice breaking. But it was not me. I was asleep at home. I closed my eyes, remembering the line from his journal, "She looks like you, but older." My pulse pounded in my ears. "Mom, did you ever see anything yourself?" I asked. There was another pause, then a trembling exhale. "Once," she whispered. "The night before he died." I sat up straighter. "What did you see?" Her voice was barely audible now. "I saw someone standing in the driveway. It was dark, but it looked like Daniel. He just stood there, staring at the house. When I opened the door, he was gone. I thought I imagined it, but..." Her voice cracked. "He was already dead by then." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my hand trembling. She had hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there in silence for a long moment, staring at nothing. The house felt even colder now, every shadow stretching longer than it should. I turned back to the journal. I had to keep reading. The next few pages were messier, the handwriting more frantic. Daniel wrote about sleeping less and less, about feeling watched even in daylight. He scribbled strange sketches in the margins, distorted faces with wide, unnatural grins, windows drawn over and over, and mirrors cracked down the middle. Then, I reached a page that was entirely different. It was a single sentence written in bold, uneven strokes. "Do not look at them when they wave." I stared at the words, feeling my stomach twist. My mind flashed back to the figure outside my window, that slow, deliberate wave. Had I already made a mistake? Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hall outside Daniel's room. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. The floorboards creaked softly, one after another, approaching the door. "Mom." I called out weakly. My voice cracked. No answer. I stood slowly, heart hammering, and pressed my ear against the door. The footsteps stopped. I held my breath. The silence was suffocating. Then, 3 slow knocks on the door. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the bed frame. My phone was still in my hand, but I could not bring myself to dial. I just stared at the door, waiting for it to open. Another knock. Louder. I backed up until I hit the wall, clutching the journal like a shield. My mind raced. Should I shout? Should I call for help? Then, silence. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. I edged closer, hand trembling as I reached for the doorknob. Slowly, I unlocked it and pulled the door open. The hallway was empty. I stepped out cautiously, scanning left and right. The air felt heavy, like the whole house was holding its breath. Then I saw it. A single sheet of paper lying on the floor, just outside the doorway. I picked it up with shaking hands. There were only 4 words scrawled across it, written in Daniel's handwriting. "Check the attic tonight." I stared at it in disbelief. I had not seen this paper before. It was not in the journal. Someone had slid it under the door. I spun around, scanning the hall, but it was empty. Against every instinct screaming in my head, I found myself moving toward the pull-down ladder in the ceiling. The attic entrance was at the end of the hall, a small square panel with a thin rope dangling down. I reached up and tugged it. The ladder unfolded with a groan. The smell of dust and old wood hit me instantly. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness above. The attic was silent. I climbed slowly, each step creaking under my weight, until my head cleared the floor and I stepped fully into the space. Boxes lined the walls, covered in dust and cobwebs. The air was cold and still. Then I saw it. A mirror, tall and cracked, leaning against the far wall. I did not remember there ever being a mirror in the attic. I raised my flashlight, its beam trembling. My reflection stared back at me, pale, wide-eyed, and terrified. Then, it smiled. I stumbled back, my flashlight clattering to the floor. I blinked, heart pounding, and when I looked again, my reflection was normal. Just me, wide-eyed and shaking. I crouched to grab the flashlight, but then I noticed something else, an old leather-bound box sitting in front of the mirror. It was identical to the one under Daniel's bed. I knelt down and opened it. Inside was another journal. This one had a single phrase written across the first page in bold letters. "You should not have come up here." The attic ladder creaked behind me. The attic ladder creaked again. I froze, crouched over the leather-bound journal, my flashlight beam shaking in my grip. The sound had come from below, near the hall. Someone, or something, was down there, close enough to reach the base of the ladder. My breath hitched. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice breaking in the silence. No answer. I turned my flashlight toward the ladder. Empty. The hallway below was pitch black, but I felt it, the presence. Like I was not alone anymore. My heart pounded painfully in my chest. I had to move. I grabbed the second journal and shoved it under my arm, my hands slick with sweat. Slowly, I backed toward the far side of the attic, putting as much distance as possible between me and the ladder. The wood groaned beneath my feet. Then, knock. Not from below this time. From behind the mirror. I spun around, nearly dropping the flashlight. My reflection stared back at me, just as it had before, still pale and terrified. The knock came again, louder this time. I stepped closer, unwilling but unable to stop myself. My reflection did not match me. Its head tilted slightly to the right even though I stood straight. "Daniel," I whispered. The reflection tilted its head farther, impossibly far, until its neck bent at a sickening angle. I stumbled back, slamming into a stack of boxes. My flashlight beam skittered across the rafters and landed on the mirror again. Empty. No reflection at all now. I swallowed hard, clutching the second journal tighter. I could not stay up here. Without another thought, I ran for the ladder, clambered down so fast I nearly slipped, and yanked it shut behind me. The hall was silent. I bolted to Daniel's room, slammed the door, locked it, and collapsed onto the bed. My hands trembled violently as I opened the new journal. The first entry was dated March 10, 2022, only 2 weeks before Daniel's death. I think it knows I am writing this. Every time I open the journal, I hear footsteps upstairs. I stopped sleeping in my own bed. The attic is louder now. At night, it sounds like someone is pacing up there. I nailed it shut again, but it does not matter. I felt my chest tighten. I saw myself yesterday. Or at least, it looked like me. Same clothes, same face. But its smile was too wide. It stood outside the window until dawn. It waved once. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, it was gone. My skin prickled. I turned the page. If you are reading this, it is already too late. They will come for you the way they came for me. They do not like being noticed. Stop looking at mirrors. Stop answering knocks. If they wave, do not wave back. I could not breathe. I shut the journal and pressed my hands against my eyes. None of this could be real. It had to be grief twisting my mind. I was tired. I was imagining things. Then came the knock. 3 sharp knocks, this time directly on Daniel's locked bedroom door. I jerked upright, staring at it. Who is it? My voice was barely a whisper. Silence. The knocks came again. I scrambled backward on the bed, clutching both journals like they could protect me. My phone was on the nightstand. I grabbed it, fingers fumbling as I unlocked it. Another message appeared, the same unknown number as before. Do not open the door. I froze. My heart thudded painfully. The knocks stopped. The silence after was worse than the sound. I stared at the phone, my breath shallow and ragged. Who was texting me? How did they know? The screen lit up again. Another message. Look under the bed. I swallowed hard, dread clawing up my throat. My gaze slid slowly to the floor. No, I would not do it. The phone buzzed again. Now. I slid off the bed on trembling legs, kneeling down slowly. My flashlight beam cut into the shadows beneath. At first, I saw nothing but dust and stray socks. Then, farther back, a folded piece of paper. I reached in and pulled it out. The paper was yellowed, edges frayed, like it had been there for years. Written in Daniel's unmistakable handwriting were 4 words. It is not me. A noise came from behind me, soft, deliberate footsteps inside the room. I turned. Someone was standing in front of the mirror. It was me. Same clothes. Same hair. But it was not my reflection. It was there in the room, smiling that same too wide smile Daniel had written about. I stumbled back, my flashlight trembling wildly in my hand. Stay away from me, I choked out. It tilted its head, studying me with an expression that was almost curious. Then it raised its hand and waved. I remembered Daniel's words, do not look at them when they wave. I squeezed my eyes shut, refusing to see it, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The floorboards creaked closer. I fumbled blindly for the door, unlocked it, and bolted into the hall. I did not stop running until I was outside, barefoot in the cold night air, standing on the damp grass in my yard. I spun around, looking up at Daniel's bedroom window. Someone was there. It was me. Watching. I staggered back, nearly tripping over the curb. My phone buzzed again. A new message. Go back inside. Read the rest. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. Another message followed immediately. If you leave now, you will never know the truth. I stared at the glowing screen, torn between terror and the gnawing, unbearable need to know what Daniel had been hiding. I looked back at the window. The figure, my double, was gone. Slowly, against every instinct screaming in my mind, I walked back inside. The house was silent. Too silent. I locked the door behind me, every nerve on fire, and crept back up to Daniel's room. The mirror stood there, empty now. I sat on the bed, opened the second journal, and forced myself to keep reading. March 17, 2022, Daniel's handwriting continued. I tried leaving the house. I stayed at a motel for 3 nights. It followed me there. I saw it in the parking lot, staring up at my window. No one else could see it. The clerk said there was nothing there. When I went back inside, the mirror in the room cracked on its own. I turned the page, my hands trembling. I do not think it matters where you go. Once you notice them, they notice you. I made a mistake. I looked at it too long. I waved back. The next line was smeared, ink blurred as if by water or tears. If you are reading this, I am sorry. You will see it too now. I slammed the journal shut, my pulse racing. And then, as if on cue, I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming up the stairs. I backed against the wall, clutching the journal like a lifeline, my eyes locked on the bedroom door. The steps stopped outside. A shadow slipped under the crack in the door. Then, a voice. Low, distorted, almost like mine. Open the door. I gripped the knob with shaking hands. No, I whispered. The voice chuckled softly, horribly. Then I will come in anyway. The knob twisted on its own. The lock clicked open. The door creaked inward. And standing there was Daniel. I gasped, my entire body locking up. He looked exactly like he had in life. Same tired eyes, same rumpled hair. He smiled faintly. Hey, he said gently. You should not be scared. It is just me. I shook my head violently. You are dead. He stepped closer. I know. But I came back because you kept reading. I told you not to. I stumbled back until my shoulders hit the mirror. My reflection, no, its reflection, smiled over my shoulder. Daniel's smile widened, too wide, splitting unnaturally as his face stretched in ways it should not. The lights flickered. And then, darkness. In the pitch black, I heard Daniel's voice, distorted now, echoing inside my skull. You wanted to know the truth. One more page. Read it. Then you will understand. When the lights flickered back on, I was alone in the room. The journals lay open on the floor, both flipped to the same page. One final entry. Tomorrow night, I will go up to the attic. If I do not come back down, burn this house. Do not look for me. And whatever you do. The sentence cut off. A single fresh line was written beneath it, in handwriting that was not Daniel's. Check the mirror at midnight. The clock on the wall read 11:59. The clock on the wall ticked louder than I had ever heard before. 11:59. My heart pounded as I stared at the journals lying open on the floor. The words "check the mirror at midnight" burned into my mind. I did not want to look. I wanted to run from this house and never come back. But some part of me, some awful, desperate part, needed to know what Daniel had seen. The second hand crept closer to 12. I stood on trembling legs and turned toward the mirror. It loomed in the corner of Daniel's room, tall and cracked, its dusty surface reflecting only the faint glow of the overhead light. I approached it slowly, every step echoing through the silence. The clock struck midnight. At first, nothing happened. I stared at my own reflection, pale and exhausted, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot. I almost laughed at myself, a weak, trembling sound that barely left my throat. Maybe it had all been in my head. Maybe grief had twisted me so badly that I had imagined it all. Then my reflection blinked. I did not. I staggered back, hitting the dresser. My reflection tilted its head to the side, smiling that same impossible smile I had seen before. Do you want to know? It whispered. Its lips moved slightly out of sync with the sound, the voice echoing in the room even though mine did not speak. I could not move. I could barely breathe. The reflection stepped forward. Its hands pressed against the inside of the glass. Daniel waved back, it said softly. That is why he stayed. My chest tightened. The surface of the mirror rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. I shook my head violently. No. Yes, it whispered. It is your turn now. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. I ripped it out with shaking hands. A new message flashed on the screen, the same unknown number as before. Do not wave. No matter what. I looked back at the mirror. My reflection's hand lifted slowly, deliberately, into a wave. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I stood frozen, unable to tear my gaze away. The reflection's smile widened, stretching unnaturally, its skin pulling at the edges. Wave to me, it whispered. The phone buzzed again. If you wave, you will stay forever. I squeezed my eyes shut. I could feel it moving closer, even through the glass, like it was leaning right against me. Its voice slithered into my ear. Do you miss him? It asked softly. Do you want to see Daniel again? My eyes flew open. Behind my smiling reflection, Daniel stood in the glass, pale and hollow-eyed, reaching out. I gasped, stumbling forward without meaning to. Daniel. His voice was faint, distant, muffled as though underwater. Help me, please. My reflection tilted its head, grinning. Wave, and you can join him. Daniel's hands pressed against the glass, his lips trembling. Please. It is cold here. I raised my hand without thinking, tears stinging my eyes. My fingers trembled inches from the glass. The phone buzzed violently, shaking in my other hand. It is not him. I froze. Daniel's image flickered, glitching like a broken video, his face distorting unnaturally. His jaw unhinged wider than it should have, his eyes darkening into empty pits. The reflection laughed. Wave, it said again. I dropped my hand, heart pounding. No, I whispered. The reflection snarled, its face twisting grotesquely. Then you will not leave. The glass rippled violently. A cold wind whipped through the room though the windows were shut tight. The journals flew open, pages flapping wildly. The mirror began to pull. I felt it immediately, a force dragging me forward, my feet sliding against the wooden floor. I grabbed the bed frame, my fingers aching from the strain. The mirror's surface bulged outward like liquid, tendrils of shimmering darkness snaking toward me. I screamed, pulling back with all my strength. The voice of my reflection roared over the sound. You saw us. You read it. You belong here now. The floor groaned under me. My grip slipped. Then, suddenly, I remembered Daniel's final words in the journal, "Burn this house." With trembling hands, I reached for the nightstand drawer, yanking it open. Inside was an old box of matches. Daniel had always kept them there for candles. I struck one against the side, the flame sparking to life. The mirror howled. I grabbed the nearest curtain and lit it. The fabric ignited instantly, fire climbing upward. Smoke filled the room. The force pulling at me weakened. I staggered backward, coughing, clutching both journals tight against my chest. The mirror shuddered violently, cracks spiderwebbing across its surface. My reflection screamed, its distorted face pressing against the glass, claws raking from the inside. Flames spread to the bed, the dresser, everything. Heat roared around me. I stumbled toward the door as the mirror shattered behind me. A deafening sound tore through the room, like glass breaking underwater. I bolted down the stairs, choking on smoke. The air burned my lungs as I stumbled out the front door and into the cold night air. From the yard, I turned back just once. The upstairs window glowed bright orange as fire consumed Daniel's room. Through the flames, I saw them, dozens of figures standing in the broken mirror, faces twisted into grotesque smiles, watching me leave. And at the very back, barely visible, Daniel stood among them. He was not smiling. I ran until I could not breathe anymore. 2 days later, I sat in my car across the street, staring at what remained of the house. Blackened beams jutted from the wreckage. The fire department had ruled it accidental, likely faulty wiring. No one asked questions. But I knew better. I held the 2 journals in my lap, wrapped tightly in a plastic bag. I should have thrown them into the fire. I should have destroyed them. But I could not. I opened the second one again. A fresh page had been added. We are not done. The phone buzzed. A new message. Look in your rearview mirror. Slowly, trembling, I did. In the back seat, smiling too wide, was Daniel.